Hello. What's going on, everybody? My name is ZRemesher, and I am also known as Sculpts, and I am a ZBrush trainer here and training manager at Maxon. And we are here to do some sculpty, some fun. Welcome in, everybody. What's going on, Chase? How you doing? Sleepy Mushroom. Tamara, welcome in. Of course, Rodolfo, what's happening? Internal Games, what is happening, everybody? Irene, welcome in, everyone. So, of course, right here on my screen, we have ZBrush Summit. Go register if you haven't already. It's online and on location. So if you're anywhere, anytime, that's what's going to happen. The dates are there. So, of course, we don't, we'll have more information that's coming out soon. But in the meantime, you can register and you can kind of get an idea. It is happening. So definitely go check that out. What's up, just in case? What's happening? Snickles here. B. Matthew, what's going on, guys? Matt! My buddy Matt, what's happening? How you going on, everyone? What's up, Ryan? How you doing? Dude, yeah, Summit. So I've been preaching it now once a week for the last few weeks, so please go register because we're going to have some really cool stuff. Once we announce it, you guys are going to be like, yes, so glad I registered. So be sure to do that. And also, too, just real quick, if you're new to this and you haven't already, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And, of course, too, there is a thing called student licensing that is cheaper than most meals worldwide. So if you want to get into ZBrush for the first time ever, you can absolutely do that. Just go to maxon.net and then go to your buy and then go down here to student teacher licensing and check that out there. So if you're new or you want to get started, you're a student, definitely go check that out. I'll drop the link in there. All right, cool. All that stuff is done. Now we get to sculpt. That is what is happening. So last week we did a very, very blackout of Nightcrawler. So we're going to be continuing Nightcrawler as well. But I do actually have one more thing. This thing I've been starting to do where I give you guys like a little bit of a tip or something that, might help your ZBrush experience. So I've been doing little one-offs. So I'm actually going to start off this stream with a little tip about how to create an alpha using sculptural methods. So if you're unfamiliar with creating tileable alphas in ZBrush, we're actually going to do that first, and then we'll get into all this here. So let's put on our handy dandy glove. Let's turn on some tunes and let's get crack-a-lackin'. And of course, too, if you have questions, you guys know that you can always ask said questions and I'll answer them as best I can and we'll go through it. So let's say, for example, we're just going to go ahead and actually just, we're going to plop him over here for a second. And what I'm going to do is we're going to actually start off with a tileable texture. So you want to create a tileable texture in ZBrush. There's a few ways to do it, but I've been using this sculptural method of doing it, which is really simple, and I think you guys will like it. So we're going to start by creating a brand new scene. So I'm actually going to turn off the Pro under Document, and I'm going to go ahead and go width of 1,000 by 1,000. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Resize, and it's going to say, hey, you sure you want to resize the document? Just say yes. And now I have this. I'm going to go ahead and Control and clear that. Now you can't really see what just happened there, especially if you're brand new to ZBrush, and that's because I have a very gray background. I think it's easier to see and it's soft on the eyes, like me. So we're going to actually go with getting a darker background so we can see the full square. So now we have a 1,000 by 1,000 size frame. So how do we do this? What do we do with this? So what we're going to do is actually open up and grab a plane 3D. So I'm going to come up here to this tool set. I'm going to grab a plane 3D. I'm going to drag this plane out, and then I'm going to come up and hit Edit or T on your keyboard, and then I'm going to say Make Polymesh 3D. And now I have this guy right here. So what we're going to do is hit F to full frame this, but there's a little note that I want to make, is that when you full frame anything in ZBrush, you'll notice here, if I zoom in or turn on the magnifying glass, that I actually have a creased edge at the end of it. That's because that is the end, the border of the actual plane. And we don't want to sculpt on that because that's going to cause deformation. So instead, I'm actually going to scale this up just slightly past the actual, the border of my now viewport. And this is so that I can actually work and get some tileable methods. And then I'm going to just go ahead and subdivide a few times to get something that's a little noteworthy, and then I'm going to lock this camera. Okay, this is to prevent me from rotating and moving this around because we don't want to do that. You can also come on up to Movie, Timeline, Show Your Timeline, and you can dock this thing here. And if you did move the camera, let's say you didn't have this and you did that, shenanigans, you can actually just use your arrow key and reset that. But it's easier just to lock for what we're trying to do. Okay, so far so good. Now what we're going to do is pick like a matte cap gray or something like that. And then from here, what I'm going to do is open up my brush menu. And this is where the secret sauce is. This is where the creme de la creme comes in. Is that whatever brush you're deciding to use. So let's say I'm going to use the DamStandard for this brush right now. We're actually going to come on over and I'm going to pick curve. And then we're going to focus on this guy right here, wrap mode. Because check this out. So wrap mode 0 means that there's no absolute wrapping. So if I start sculpting, it's not tiling. Nothing is happening, right? So what I want to do is I actually want to come up here and turn on wrap mode to 1. And now as I'm drawing out, watch what happens when I leave the frame. Boom! It is tileable. So now you can come through and you can start sculpting. So let's say you want to actually generate some sort of like skin texture. You want to be able to bring in a little bit of your nice, like, you know, nice little vibes of this. Let's actually get like a little bit of a brush here. So let's go alpha 18, ClayBuildup, BCB, alpha 18. Now I'm coming through here, right? And I'm going to just start maybe adding a little bit of detailing coming through here. But look, I started sculpting, and what happened is that I was, again, not wrap mode. So we want to make sure that whatever brush you're using, go ahead and turn on that wrap mode, get that going as much as possible, okay, and make your alpha the way you want it to be. And that's the important part, because every time I want to work on something, I want to be able to make sure that I'm wrapping it. And that's the key to this. So once you're done and you think life is good and you're pretty happy with the results, let's just say that this is really good. Again, when you're smoothing, turn that wrap mode on to 1 and then come through. That way you smooth everything perfectly. Now you're done. You have your texture. This is a really amazing texture, right, guys? But anyway, so now what we're going to do is we're going to make this a tileable alpha. So the easiest way to make an alpha is just come on up here to the alpha palette and say grab dock. And boom. Now I have my alpha that is right here for me, which is really good. So now if I grab, let's say, a new plane surface, and I go ahead and say make polymesh 3D, now I can actually come in here and generate, let's say, like a noise. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring in that alpha that I would want. Of course, before I do that, I need to save it, right? So let's do that part. So I'm going to come up here to texture. Let's come on up here, actually. Let's go ahead and export this out. So come to alpha, export this new alpha out. So I'm going to say, yes, that's my alpha texture. Yay, bada bing, bada boom. Then I'm going to come in to noise, turn on alpha, and now I have my texture right here, which is cool. Now, of course, right now we can't really see it, but there it is. It's there, but there's too much noise. So we're actually going to go with this mixed basic noise. We're going to turn this down so that this goes here to 0. And now if I scale my alpha up and down, look at that. Look at that. And I could increase the actual strength of this. And now I can go ahead and say OK. And I just made a tileable alpha right there, right for you. So boom. Now it's actually, if I come through and rotate, you'll see that it's right there. So that's how you would end up making tileable alphas in ZBrush. Really simple with a very sculptural approach. So take your time. Don't use this one because this one is like more of like how to do it. But you know, you want to make a really good skin texture. You want to make a nice basket weave. You want to do something like that. You can actually come through and just start sculpting, laying down your brushes, and then grab that dock, and that's how you would do it. So hot tip of the day, tileable textures in ZBrush. Bada bing, bada boom, aka wrap mode. Now expand on that just one more time here. I'm going to turn this off, delete that noise, and kind of go over wrap mode for a second. Wrap mode set to 1, again, does that thing, right, where it's going to expand off onto the distance, right? And again, let's scale this up so we're not sculpting on the edge here. So, and let's turn off this alpha. But here's the cool part. To expand on what wrap mode 2 does, check this out. And then wrap mode 3 or 4 does multiple. So you can go nuts with all these different ways. Again, just the idea is scale this up beyond this point, lock that camera. So now you're just making a ton of stuff really, really quickly. You know, do a little bit of subdivision, kick this up, and just within minutes, you can get something that looks kind of cool really, really fast. Cool. So there you go. Actually, I kind of like that. That's kind of cool. All right, let's see here. Did I miss any questions? Boom, what's happening? Then what's happening? Cheers, errors. Started out using trim brushes, but it doesn't work with the symmetry I saw from someone on the other tube. How can I How can I symmetry with the Transpose brush or trim square, may I ask? The trim brushes? Okay, here, 1 second. Let's actually plop open. Let's switch this back. Any questions on this before I move forward? If you use, so with any type of radial symmetry, you'll just want to make sure that it's on, it's on in a way that makes sense. Because you're making an alpha, you would want to make sure that it doesn't seem so noticeable in the repeating. So I personally wouldn't use any type of symmetry on there. However, for certain cases, yeah, you could come through and turn on your symmetry. I have never really played with that, so let's give it a shot. Let's back up and see if that's even a plausible method to go about it. But you're working in such a kind of a small space. So if I were to come up here to transform, I have my brush on, and I'm going to turn on my brush with wrap mode 1, and then let's go to transform, activate symmetry. We'll do radial symmetry. I didn't mean posable symmetry. Why did I do that? Let's go up here, X. So yeah, you can see here, it is doing it. So I have radial symmetry turned on in very odd ways. This is probably a lot of information. It's getting a little buggy right now, but I'm pushing it. I have too much going on here. This is my fault. So let me turn off the Y coordinates. So there you go. So yeah, radial symmetry on like X-axis. But again, you're working on a flat surface, so radial symmetry, I don't think you're taking the full potential of radial symmetry on that. But it does work. So again, so like if we had level 3, for example, boom. This is like one of those kaleidoscope arts. So again, yeah, you're just grabbing the dock. At the end of the day, you're grabbing a dock. Now, to let you know, if you're going to try this with like an IMM brush, that's not going to work. So if I like pull this out here and I take off my subdivisions, so I'm coming through and it's kicking off, that wouldn't work. So if you wanted to go into some IMM action, look up the plugin NanoTile, and that would actually be another level, which I could showcase on another day. But just note, it's more for a sculptural approach, but it really does work out well. Okay. Does it work for RGB texture too? Yes, it does. Absolutely. Just come on up and draw. Make sure that you actually come here, do your color fill white. And then if I have a texture, for example, let's grab this texture here, for example, and I have RGB turned on. You can see here now I'm getting some color. So yeah, but if you're going to generate an alpha, make sure that alpha is black and white, but you can grab dock, and then you can have a textured version of that. So yeah, so you just come up here, instead of going to alpha, you go to texture and then grab dock. You can grab unshaded dock and depth, shaded dock and depth, unshaded dock, or shaded dock. So does that make sense? So you have options there. So yeah, if you're going to work with color, then absolutely just come up here to texture and grab that one instead. Boom. And that will give you the RGB. So make sure you're working with RGB turned on. Great question. Boop, boop. All right. Let's go ahead and do it. And let's go back to the Nightcrawler and then IC film. I'm going to go ahead and answer your question. So I'm going to go ahead and actually come through here. Let's go grab new dock. So now I'm going to set this dock to my 1920 vibes by 1080. That's about, or you could just come up here, wide, new document, clear that off. And then we can go ahead and drag out our guy here. Boom. Clear that. Perfect. Okay. My pen stopped working for some reason. Why did my pen? Oh, it's not my pen. It's my camera lock. What a noob. Come on in. There we go. All right. Turn my camera back. Turn my pen back on. Unlock your camera. Okay, great. Perfect. Do I have a Retopo tutorial specifically for ZBrush? So do I have one for ZBrush? I don't think I have one specifically for ZBrush that I've done. We are definitely working on trying to get new videos, but I can actually cover that question. I can show you the Retopo process. It's actually very, very simple. I think there's even a couple Ask ZBrush videos on there because there's quite a few ways to do that. So instead of creating a tutorial, I can just answer that question instead. So the first question, though, going back to IC film, just so I don't miss it, is how can I make a new sphere with? How can you make a new sphere with low poly? Wait, hold on. That wasn't the question. Sorry. I started use trim brushes, but it doesn't work with symmetry, like from what I saw somebody use on the YouTube the other day. Okay, so that was the question. So if I were to utilize, let's just, instead of putting in a new thing, let's insert a new sphere. This is like, this sphere is my best friend. Him and I get along so well. So real quick, to do anything with like trim brushes. So when you mean trim brushes, are you talking about like knife curve, for example, like this guy right here? Because knife curve does work symmetry. You just have to make sure symmetry is turned on. But if you mean the TrimDynamic, that also will work symmetry as well. So again, you're just coming on here, turning on X for symmetry, and that will do that. Now there are some brushes that don't respect the symmetry aspect. And more specifically, I'm going to go in here to slice curve. Symmetry is turned on, and bada bing, bada boom. It did not respect the symmetry aspect. So with something like slice curve, there are a few brushes that won't respect that, and you'll just have to be aware of those. That's actually where the knife curve actually comes in clutch these days, is because it does respect symmetry. And if I remember right, clip curve as well. Clip curve also, yep, respects symmetry as well. So, but again, like if you, any of these brushes on the inside of this palette, most of them, if not all, most of them will be respecting symmetry. It's just those few, like I mentioned, like the slice curve does not respect symmetry on that. So to do anything symmetrical, again, you're just going to want to come through and make sure you have symmetry turned on. And to take this one step further, if you're in 2023.1.2, which launched yesterday, this part launched on 0.1.1. If I turn on local symmetry here, right, and I have the dynamic button engaged, if I rotate off over here in space, turn this around, move this way, now my gizmo is driving my symmetry. If I make a mask, that mask is now supported with symmetry as well. And also too, so are curve brushes. So if I come over here and grab, let's say, curve tubes, because I'm being like a cool kid, and I come in and I start, that's going to respect local symmetry as well as even selections here. So the new local symmetry respects all that. So you have masking, also IMM brushes are respected with that local symmetry. And this is something to remember. And also, notice I'm off here in space, again, using local symmetry. Pay attention to this geometry, because if I also come over here to geometry, and then I go to modify topology, mirror and weld is also respected in that local symmetry position, because it's driven by this gizmo. And for whatever reason, if you're like me and you're one of those cool kids and you're moving over here and you're doing stuff with a gizmo and you've lost your symmetry on this gizmo, that's okay. Don't freak out. First thing to do is turn off symmetry. Come in here and find your center line, or what's close enough to your center line, and turn on your Z modeler. From here, I'm going to go ahead and press and hold the space bar, and I'm going to find this feature called Set Symmetry, and this is going to be off of 2 polys. So if I put here and click here, it drives now my gizmo back to the center of that area. And then I can send this back to the center of my subtool, and now if I grab a clay brush and I turn symmetry back on, now that works. But as soon as I take off the gizmo, now my symmetry is no longer being enabled, because the local sim is gizmo driven. So that's how you would reset the symmetry as well if you do end up losing it. But what I would always recommend doing is, before you move off this, to do some sort of, like, you know, gizmo change, if you're going to use local symmetry, I usually just drive the mirror and weld aspect first, which then clicks that new section before moving it off in space. That way I know I have a true center line down the middle, and I can always get that back. Boom, boom, boom. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, make all the textures for science. Let's see here. Okay, so retopology, and then we'll get to some sculpting because I definitely want to do that. Want to do some sculpting. Yeah, the knife curve I see is absolutely that way. What's the easiest way to punch a hole into Geo? The easiest way to punch a hole into Geo. This is gonna rock you. You're gonna love this one. Check this out. I use the folders. So I activate Control F or Command F if you're on Mac and open up a new folder. Easiest way to pop a hole, and in my opinion, there is no easier way to do this at the moment, is grab in an object like this guy. So I'm gonna turn on the view, the version 2, turn on just these two objects. Have my main object I want the hole in, my secondary, what I'm going to be using to cut a hole into ZBrush, and I'm going to turn that little subtract mode on, and then I'm going to go ahead and position this in a way that I would want. You could also use an IMM brush, which would be even easier if you're cooler than me, which you are, definitely. So come through here, position where you want said hole, turn on live boolean, boom, you have a hole. But what's cooler about this is not the fact that you just have a hole, it's the fact that it updates in real time. And this is what you would want to be able to make sure you come through stuff. So if you're doing something like this, you're like, I need a hole specifically in a very fun spot. And then later your boss comes by and says, I want that hole 2 inches to the left. Boop, there you go. Now it's there, and then they can see what that is. And what's cooler about that too is that when you're working on this mesh here, because you're working with live boolean, it's going to respect that live boolean, so I can still come in and make changes. And if you wanted to modify the shape of the hole, then you select what's making that hole cut, and now I can start pushing through and making this. This is a lot easier of a process than doing any manual process, because again, live boolean, and that's it's just going to do it update on the fly, which is perfect. Now you're saying to yourself, okay, but eventually I'm going to need to make that real geometry, and then I'm going to need to be able to clean that up. And you're absolutely 100% correct. So I'm going to solo this to see the mesh that I'm working with, and I'm going to subdivide this a few times just so I have some nice smooth surface. It's not super faceted. And also too, I'm trying to match it to this geometry, so I'll subdivide this a couple times just to get something nice, right? And then it's easy, I don't know why I closed the subtool menu, open that up. It's easy too to come up here to the geometry tab, and then just, if you want, you could delete your hierarchy. You don't have to. I do it that way just because I'm weird. But you don't even have to do it that way. How do I know? Because you're just gonna come through here, up here at the top, and you could do Boolean folder at its highest and it'll work. So when I come in here and I do this Boolean folder action, it's going to generate a new mesh with a new hole in it at the highest subdivision level. And then now I want to actually ZRemesh this and give this some cleaner topology. And the reason why I subdivided it up is because the reality is that if you're working with super low mesh, then you're going to have much bigger stitching and it's going to look a little bit nastier. So if I come back here and actually drop the subdivision down on both of these objects, and I do this process again where I turn this on, say Boolean the folder. Now let's take a look at the wireframe. If I look at this wireframe, you'll see how low res it is and how much bigger these stitches here are. And if I kick to this wireframe, you'll see how nicer the topology is and how smaller those stitches are, which is really giving you a nice clean surface. So here, if I ZRemesh this, I might be able to get something out of it, but it's almost like too much of a risk for me to try to sit here for 10 minutes and try to ZRemesh. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and show you my secret sauce of ZRemeshing, which is I open up the geometry ZRemesher. Now notice again, I have nice clean topology, or at least clean enough that it's going to work, and they are close enough to equal quads. So here I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, from here, I'm going to pick something, say like 10,000. I know it's set at 5. But depending on the size of your topology, the easier it is to bump it up a little bit, gives ZRemesher a bit of an easier start. And then I'm going to say keep groups, turn that down because I do have groups. And I do have a couple sharp edges, but for right now, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to say keep groups, smooth groups down to 0. And then this is the big one, okay? Having adapt turned on is perfect, but having adaptive size set to 50 is not so perfect. So I'm going to drop this down to 0. And the reason why is because adaptive size is trying to increase the size or decrease the size of the quad depending on the ebb and flow of your mesh. I want clean, perfect quads all the way around, and I want them to be about the same size. So this is going to help me give just ZRemesher a little bit of a fighting chance to give me what I want. And if I start with a good foundation, I should get good results. So here now I'm going to go ahead and hit ZRemesher. Of course, before I do, if you do have any history you want to project, just go ahead and control stamp that on the timeline, hit ZRemesher, and let it do its magic. I'll take a sip and read some questions. Doop, doop, doop. Okay, cool. Got some more questions coming in. And then from here now, so notice here there's a little bit of crazy crunching, as I call it. This is telling me that there was just not enough information to capture the shape of this geometry. So if I come through and I see this faceting, ZRemesher didn't necessarily fail. What failed is the fact that there's just not enough information to capture the details that was there. So I can either Control Z if you're in 2022, or if you're in 2023, I can actually bump up the resolution a little bit, maybe do a detect edges if I would like, because I do have a sharp edge right here. And so I'm going to bump this up to, like, let's say 20. I'm going to hit retry. And what retry is going to do is it's not going to retry a ZRemesh on this mesh. It's going to retry on this mesh, but from this position. So when I do retry, now it's going to come through and give me a new option. And the reason why is because it's much faster. It cached that data for me. And so now I can come through, and that's looking a little bit better, but I still get some crunching here. So this could be a fault of me and prepping my file. So if I come back in here, I'll see that, yeah, my polygroups are kind of wonky, right? So let's fix that. So let's come here to deformation. Let's come up here to polish groups. And if you ever see one of these bubbles, that little bubble is just another algorithm. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that, and I'm going to polish my groups, giving me something a little bit cleaner to work around. And then from there, if you really want to check your mesh before you do anything, come up here to mesh integrity, check your mesh, and then fix it if it came up with little errors. Trust me, if it had errors, you would know. And then let's go through this one more time. And now I'm going to go ahead and do another ZRemesh. And so this is my whole process with this. And these results should be a lot better. And it's just showcasing, yep, there we go. Now it's just showcasing that I gave ZRemesher a fighting chance. Now you see this area right in here, and I see this area right in here. Again, these areas are kind of a little crunchy. These are not the best. So we can also try to fix these with ZRemesher guide. So B, Z, and then R for guide. And then this is where your curve strength is going to come in. So I want to actually come in, and I want to support this area right here, right? And also, too, again, if I had an object that's off here in space, make sure my local symmetry is turned on so that it ZRemeshes properly. And then I'll come up here and up the curve strength, and I'll say same, and I'll try this again. And this will actually come through and might give me something a little wonky. Let's turn that back off. Let's come in here, try one more time. Yes. There we go. Curve strength, let's boop that up. There we go. Perfect. So now this is looking a little bit better, a little bit cleaner. So this is how I would go through it. I would still probably up this a little bit, but hopefully you get the point of kind of working with that mesh. Awesome question. I just went on a tangent too. That's always helpful. Yes, absolutely, AR. Absolutely. Yes, it is matcha I'm drinking, Jacob. Yep. Oh, thanks, Jeff. There you go, AR. There you go. Hey, Tattoon, how you doing? Perfect, perfect. All right, all right, all right. So now we're going to go through and start... So now we're going to go through and start sculpting and working on our Nightcrawler. And at the same time, I do see a question by Icy Hot coming in about moving multiple meshes at the same exact time. So do not to worry. I will answer that as I work, because that's something I do on quite a regular basis. So this is where we are, and we need to do some more scene building and make him look a little bit more like a cool character. So what I'm going to do is actually what I will do real quick is, which is kind of going to answer Icy Hot's question at the gate, is I need to put him in a folder all by his little lonesome self. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to be able to move him around when I need to, and also create a base. If we go back to the concept, or at least some of the concepts I'm pulling from, you'll see here I have some of these concepts here. I also want to sculpt his face a little bit, so we're going to give him a little bit of a rocky base, because I do like this pose a lot. This has been my favorite pose, and so I want to kind of get that situated and match that just a little bit more. But then also too, I want to give him some more details and such like that, block out his hair, his clothing, etc. So we have a lot to do, so let's get into that. So first thing is, let's go ahead and I'm just going to pick his body, and I'm going to pick this little pizza box, which is going to select multiple things at the same time. Notice his feet and his body is selected, so that's how I would move 2 or more subtools at the same time. But now I want to put all of him in a actual folder. So I'm going to select everything by Control-Shift dragging. And if you're using a clip curve or a knife brush or something, and you want to switch between the actual selection tool and this tool, just press Shift-Control one more time. That switches it. That selects. And then I'm going to Control-F, grab this. Say, always ask me the question, because I'm taking everything that's selected and putting it into one folder. And I'm going to call this Nightcrawler. Can Ian spell? That is the question of the day. And now we have a folder called Nightcrawler where all of those parts are in there, which means now I can go ahead and insert a sphere. And I'm going to go ahead and open up this folder and drag this all the way down to the bottom. And now we can start creating a base for him. Here we go. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, get a little bit more of a safe zone. Let's kind of scale this down. And what I want to do is I want to actually get like kind of like a little rocky plane texture. So I'm going to come up here to my gizmo, and I'm going to go ahead and open up that cog menu and hit extender. And I'm going to extend this up a little bit. Hit W to switch back, move this around, scale it down a little bit maybe. There we go. Say something like that. And extend that sphere, because I also want to be able to position him correctly. And right now, I can't do that without an object. So now I have this guy. And I'm going to go ahead and accept these changes. And now I'm going to come up here, go to Geometry, DynaMesh. And let's actually get a resolution. That's pretty close, so let's say 200. And then let's go ahead and DynaMesh it. Pizza party! Woo, woo, woo! Exactly. Hey, Emperor Cheese, how you doing, buddy? How you doing, buddy? All right, now let's go ahead and start getting like kind of a rock texture. So let's come up here. I like to grab the knife curve. And we're going to start cutting, slicing and dicing a little bit here. So I just want the basic shape, and I'm not going to be working on symmetry here. So I just want a little bit of just kind of like what would make sense for like rocky terrain. I'm not an environment artist to say the least, but I definitely have sculpted a rock or two. And so my thought process here is that I'm just kind of going through and getting something that I ultimately would think would look pretty nice. And a nice space for him to be on, right? And I'm also going to want this maybe a little bit slanted. So say something like that. And now I'm going to go and pick the TrimDynamic brush. Now remember, I'm in DynaMesh mode, so I can DynaMesh at any point in time. And now I'm going to go ahead and start kind of just sculpting something that might have some decent fall off. Let's get a better material. So let's get matte cap gray. And I'm going to get something that might look kind of cool. Hopefully. That's a little too much. That's still a bit too much. Let's come here like that. Now this is too where I might say that ClayPulish is going to end up being your best friend for some nice sharp edges. And then I'm going to grab my ClayBuildup, and I'm going to grab a really rough kind of alpha. Let's move him over here. Let's grab this alpha. Say alpha 28. There we go. Rocks! I missed the last one where you made this. Is there a way to pose a subtool I have another subtool in T-Pose, but it updates to the Pose subtool as well. Ooh, that is such a great question. Yes, actually, there is a way to do that. There is a little bit of a way to do that. There's a new feature called ProxyPose, which can kind of do that. So if you have a yeah, you know what? Let me demonstrate that, because that is a new feature, and I think you all will like that feature if you don't know that feature. So let me just get a couple textures here, and then we'll answer that question. Just a little bit of something, something, something. And again, I'm also going to use the hPolish, so BHP for hPolish, and get a little flat areas in here. Now, I'm not going for detail here. This is something to note real fast. I'm blocking out, so there is absolutely zero, and I mean this with all sincerity and all of the love I can give to you. Do not go into detailing your models at the blackout phase. Don't do that. That's just like, you know, you wouldn't like slap a ton of clay on an actual sculpture and then start carving in little lines. Like, it just wouldn't be a thing. And I know in the digital world, we get to work a little bit faster than traditional sculptors. However, the reality is that as soon as you go into detailing, you're kind of burning time, and you don't want to do that. So we want to make sure that we don't spend too much time on tasks that are going to be repeated or later. So really, you're looking for the vibe, the ebb and the flow with everything. So I'm just getting something that I think would relatively resemble what I'm going for. Nothing more, nothing less. I don't really need it to be much more. So just trying to get something that I can call a rock. Okay. And this is also where the knife brush kind of comes in clutch, because I can make little cut shapes like this, right? So I can come in and just kind of cut a surface like this. So the way I'm doing that is I'm coming in, and then, so that's shift control here, right? So I'm doing a shift control drag out, then double tapping alt and getting like a little bit of a cut line in there. And I can move that there and just get something that looks close enough. And then I can even take the DamStandard, kind of carve in just a little bit. Just give me just a little bit more of what I want. All right. This will be close enough for what I'm trying to achieve. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save next, actually, and repeat that process. And now I'll showcase ProxyPose. ProxyPose, I think you're going to dig ProxyPose. So check this out. So I'm going to load in one of my earlier versions of Nightcrawler. Actually, no, scratch that. You know what I'm going to do, actually? Let's go here to downloads. Watto test pose. Okay, here we go. Check this out. So I'm going to bring up my Watto because he has a lot of detail. This is an older model version I've actually recently updated. So here is my Watto that I was working on in my previous streams. And now, if we take a look at this here, okay, you can see that I have a lot of the textures and details and stuff like that, right? So from this area, actually, you asked for a T-pose. I wanted to show it with detail, so let's do this. Let's do this. Let's come here. Let's go save. Let's just show it on our T-pose guy. I'm overcomplicating life. Okay, so here's our T-pose version, right? And we're done with him. We like him. He thinks he's awesome. Let's actually come up here to surface noise, and I'm going to give him kind of a concrete look. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to, with this graph right in here, I'm actually able to click a line. And if I pull it out and bring it back, it's going to make it kind of sharp. So I'm actually going to do that a couple times and give me kind of a little bit of a weird kind of concrete texture here. I'm going to drag this down. Kind of a little bit more porousy or pitted. Say something like that. I'm really going to push the detail in. and say OK. So now I have this, and then I'm going to go ahead and apply to mesh. Now, of course, let me subdivide a couple times. So when I apply to mesh, that detail actually remains mostly there. OK, beautiful. Now let's actually go through here. I'm going to, just for the sake of argument, delete the lower history to really like drive this home. But this feature also works with subdivisions. So now I want to pose him, but I want to keep a T-posed version of him. So in order to do this, we're going to showcase a new feature called ProxyPose. So if I go under Geometry, ProxyPose, I now have this ability to actually turn ProxyPose on. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a proxy cage of my mesh, not a projection, but a proxy cage that's going to allow me to move my mesh around and then snap back all those details. But here's the fun part. The way to do what you're asking is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to find out of 4 million a good cage that would resemble this character, right? So I'm going to go ahead and start using the reduction slider and find something that's pretty close. Usually I kind of stick around a 1 to 2% rule. And what I mean by that is right up here at the top left, it says your face count is about 2.3% of your total mesh. And if I look at this now, this is what my cage looks like. So now that I have this, you can see this is the T-pose version. What I want to do is leave this one proxy pose. In fact, what I'll even do is I will save this. I will go save as. I'll come in here to my desktop and I will call this my posed, my T-pose / pose testing, just for fun. Boom. All right. So now I have this. Now I want to duplicate the ProxyPose version. The reason why is because the way ProxyPose works is that you need to be able to keep the exact vertex count between your original ProxyPose T-pose and your posed one. So what you do is you go ahead and, again, we're now in ProxyPose. I'm just going to Control-Shift-D or come down here and hit duplicate, and that's going to duplicate my mesh. Now both of my meshes are at 47,722. Both the T-pose and the pose version. Now I can come through here and I'm going to take the second one. So this one will be called posed 1. So this is posed 1. This is my T-pose mesh. This is posed 1. I'm going to duplicate this again. I'm going to call this posed 2, which it already did because I named it right. And I'll duplicate that one more time and call this posed 3. Now I always have my T-posed version, okay? So what I can do is actually make a duplicate of this just to make sure I have that okay. And then this will be my backup T-pose. All right. Now, when I go to duplication, you'll want to notice that it kept the ProxyPose there. Like, that's important. So we want to make sure we have that. So now this is my backup T-pose, and this is my main T-pose. And I'll even call this my main T-pose. Hopefully you know where I'm going with this. But now on posed 1, I'm going to come in, and I'm going to go ahead and let's pull his arms down. So I'm going to soften this up. And I'm going to bring this down. And then I'm going to have him looking like Chris Evans on every poster ever from, you know, his Captain America days. And I'm going to put here. And I'm going to rotate his head just a little bit. I'm going to solo this out. And I'm going to have him looking up. What's happening? Yes. I contemplate the life and everything about it. Here we go. Boom. There's that. Okay, that's my first pose. I come here to my second pose now. And here, I actually want this guy to be facing this way because he's a cool kid. And I want him with his arms bent. So I'm going to bend his arm this way. Okay, I don't want symmetry anymore because I'm posing people. So I'm going to come in here. And put this here. I'm going to bend his arm. We're not going to do the best job in the world, but you'll figure, you'll see. So we'll come in and we'll just do this right here, just so we have extreme opposites, right? And let's actually put this gizmo somewhere around here, and then let's just bend his leg up. Yeah, his leg is bent. You'll do a better job than me. And then the last one here is that we're just going to flip him on his head, rotate him, and crush him. Okay. So now we have this. So these are all of our different poses. So what do I do with this? Now check this out. When I come back to my main T-pose here, I go under Geometry, I have a button called Overwrite Pose. And now when I click Overwrite Pose, now here I have this pose, my T pose, this running kind of weird pose, and this upside down pose. And when I click one, boom, it posed it. I come back, I click another, boom, it poses it. I come back here, I click, boom, I pose it. I come back to T pose, boom, I pose it. And then when I go ahead and let's say I do want this pose here, this is the one I like, I come in and I click ProxyPose, and then it's going to come and recall all of that detail back to it. Here's my high res, and then there's all the stuff. Now the thing to remember is that the vertice part, that's the important part, the vertice count. So really when you're posing, you'll be able to kind of play with a few different options and then switch it back. But making detail mesh from here and then switching back to T-pose, that may not be possible, only because if when I click T-pose mesh here, the vertice count now went to 50,000, and when I say overwrite pose, all those options are now grayed out. So you'd have to get the exact one. So think of this workflow as like you're trying to decide a pose, you're coming in and you're figuring it out, and then you want to make the sculptural changes, or you have one character and you need multiple poses, and you don't want to sit there and like finish one up, and each one could be different. So really like think of it in that regard, but it's a really great tool in order to switch between those different areas. Now what's really neat though is like a saving grace is let's say you accidentally unclick this, you know, like, oh my God, I didn't mean to. You can Control Z back into that T-posed version. So just as a heads up, that's what you can do. And then when I come back in here, again, all of those are selectable. So that would be the way to go about it. So that's why I was like, yeah, you can kind of do it that way. But moving back into T-pose after you pose everything, that one will be a little bit more difficult just because of the vertice count at this time. Yeah. Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that Watto is I actually finished it. I now want to prep it for 3D print and all that stuff. Perfect. All right. Let's go back to, let's start loading in our other project. I do want to get some Nightcrawler stuff done, but I love answering questions too. So you guys are amazing as always. All right. Okay, now we have this guy here. Let's go ahead and actually get this pose a little bit more settled in, and then let's get some other details like his hair in there. We'll get some blocked out hair, and then we'll go ahead and start getting his face looking pretty good. I kept his face here in true symmetry, so we're going to find that today. So let's actually first get this pose a little bit better than it is now that we have a, quote, rock in place. This will be fun. So I'm going to go about posing this the traditional way I do things, where I go T-pose mesh, and I send stuff back in this way. This is just kind of the vibe. But check this out too. This is actually pretty low here, but it's not low enough for what I want. So check this out. I can actually come in here, and I can ProxyPose everything within my section. I can actually ProxyPose my mesh in T-pose mesh if I want to. So here, I can actually come through. Let me see. Does this work the way I want it to? Okay, what I want to do is actually mask everything else off. ProxyPose here. And then I'm going to come in. I want to move this way. Kind of soften this up a little bit, mask that section off. Okay, cool. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to soften this mask a little bit because I want this joint to make a little bit more sense. I always like to position my, the gizmo where the joint would be. It's just a little bit more of a realistic approach to things. And I think I want to narrow this in just a little bit, but pull this up a little bit more. I need this bent back just a little bit more here. And then I'm going to, with the Transpose tool, come in and do a little bit of a control drag on this joint. Hit Y to go switch back and maybe clean that up just a little bit. And then for this hand, let me come in and just deselect that section, make sure that's not masked off. Then I'm going to go ahead and tap here because I want to bring this in just a little bit more. And rotate this around. Say something like this. We're going to fix the anatomy, so I'm not too concerned with if it looks too terrible. What I'm concerned about is just getting the proper... I'd rather make the hands all wonky and have the pose right and then rebuild hands. If that makes any sense. So I'm going to drag this up. So I want them like this. I want them kind of pulling that chest back a little bit. And when in doubt, try the pose yourself. There we go. Kind of pull this up a little bit. Really just finding his character a little bit more. Oh, okay. Twitch doing ad stuff. Well, don't worry. We do have everything that stays on our Yes, Ian, speak. The YouTube side of things. These are all recorded and brought back up for previous. And I also too, we have an amazing and very talented colleague who comes in. His name is Dr. Sassy. And he actually timestamps all of these, so then you don't have to scrub through. He's super amazing with that stuff. So we also have somebody who does that. So huge shout out to him. And I know he'll be watching this because he timestamps it. So here's looking at you, Dr. Sassy. Thank you so much for all the work you do. It makes everyone's viewership a lot easier when they can come back and do this stuff. So a little shout out to my colleague making that magic happen. All right, let's roll these shoulders back just a little bit more. There we go. Really pushing this pose up a little bit. Now here too, I think his legs are a little too low. So I'm going to mask this section off too, and I think I'm going to raise his legs up a bit. And again, same thing. I like to put the gizmo right where the joints are, and I like to kind of angle it where it makes the most sense. There we go. Now the feet are going to be arched in a way, so we'll be able to kind of fix that section there. Let's grab this. Let's mask this section off here. Same thing. Let's grab this. Let's put this in here. Let's bring this up a little bit. And I can even, look, I can even do some sculptural changes. I can even move this a little bit here. So then here, at this arch area this way, what I'm going to do is kind of bring this in and rotate this around. Move this. Kind of point this foot. Rotate that sucker. Rotate! Whee! Now here's the thing, the arch of the foot, you always want to make sure that the shin and the top of the foot, I'm showing you on camera here. So the shin and the top of the foot, they need to relatively point the same direction. I like how I just committed to that. We're just going to do that. So so they point in relatively the same direction. So you don't want your foot to be kind of off randomly in left field. Like, you know, I'm trying to keep this matched. You don't want something like this. That's never going to work. So you want to make sure that, like, you know, the foot can do some bending and rotating. You can do some arches and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that stuff like that makes the most sense. So when you're doing your poses, take your time. I never rush a pose. I'm not a super fast sculptor with that stuff. So I try to kind of make it seem as believable as possible. Actually, I'm going to go back here. So this might be too high now. Saw those happy mediums. Yeah, this might be a little bit more like that. Might need to flare that out. Grab this guy coming in, masking this section off. So really just taking your time. Honestly, if I was not streaming, I did this pre-stream, but I kind of got into this pose as best I could. That was not an easy feat, but I was able to get pretty close to it. And this helped kind of like me figure it out a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to isolate this section. Grab these hands. Grab this head, unmask the head. Kind of come at it from the gut perspective here. Kind of lean him forward a little bit. He's a little too far back. Okay. I think that should be fine. We still have a lot of anatomy to fix, but that's okay. That'll be close enough. And then we can actually come up here with this foot. So I am actually out of ProxyPose now, and I did that on purpose because I want a little bit of a sharper transition with this foot. We're going to have to fix his feet anyway. We're going to be doing most of this in asymmetry, so that's okay. It's a little too low. Let's clean that up there. Let's move this up. Over, kind of rotate that around. And then I'm going to move the rock instead of the body. Kind of get this a little bit more center to his weight. And then actually, let's do this. Let's mask this area off. Okay. That's a little bit better. I don't think it'll be final, but let's not do too much too quick. So let's come back in. Let's look at the questions. Yes. Thank you, doctor. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Cool, cool, cool. Caitlin, how you doing? All right, let's get some more of this block out phase here, and then we'll come in here and do the rest. I really want to find the character. He's super important. Like we have a good amount of information here to pretty much like we'll fix this anatomy. I'm not worried about that. But let's start figuring out his facial expression here. So we're gonna save this. Now figuring out faces, I'll tell you right now, it's always an interesting process. And it's something that if you're not good at faces, like I actually have to work at face anatomy to get something that I like. So if you're working on faces, take your time and just really know that the face measures on itself. Like there's not a lot of really good reference here to his character. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to this area, maybe find some, let's see, we'll call this Nightcrawler, X-Men, face, right? Now, there's been some live actions, but okay, here we go. Here's a little bit more information. In fact, this is a lot of information right here because this is a nice 3/4 view. This gives us depth, and this gives us a little bit more character. So here, I'm actually going to drag that into my pure ref because that's going to give me some nice solid info. Again, he's usually drawn very shaded, very dark. But this is actually a lot of information. And the profile, or a profile of sorts, because we're kind of coming in and doing something that's kind of our own take on a lot of different variations. This would actually be really cool. Shout out to this guy, Nick Robles. Has some pretty cool art there. All right, so now we have this information here. And now we can start finding, we can actually find this character with even just this guy right here. So I'm going to come in. I like to start with a little bit of, if I go to DynaMesh, find a resolution, and actually increase that size a little bit. Smooth that surface here. Okay, perfect. Now we're gonna start finding some stuff. So let's grab our move brush. He has bigger ears. Oh, nice. Okay, his face actually must have gotten moved just a little off center in my posing. So I'm actually gonna turn this off. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna come up here to Stager. I'm gonna hit home stage, and then I'm gonna actually send him home and target stage this. And now we're gonna look at him separately, okay? And then from here, I'm gonna come in and let's do a mirror and weld because I want this to be truly symmetrical. So let's go to Geometry, Modify Topology, Mirror and Weld. And actually here, let's go back to Stager. And it has a little too much of a cut. So I'm just gonna move him over just a smidget. Say something like that. Modify topology. There we go. That'll be fine. That'll be a good spot. And then I'll go back to Stager. I'll restore my target. And then before I start working, I'll switch between the two. What happened? Oh, okay. I see what you're doing. All right, that's fine. You know what? Let's just put his head back from the beginning. I broke it. Good job, Ian. Let's move this up here. Does that work out well? Yep. Okay. All right. That's a good position. Let's start back here. So I backed it up and actually moved it from the moved position. So that was my mistake. I messed it up in the actual moving. I thought I was leaving it alone, but I didn't. So I must have moved him to the left or to the right. So I'm going to fix that, go back all the way to the beginning because his head was only head movements. I'll set a home stage now. And then at some point in time, if I need to, I can set a target stage, but this will keep him here. Okay, that's fine. All right, now let's go ahead and start finding this character. So let's come in here, let's grab DynaMesh, let's up the resolution a little bit. Let's turn on DynaMesh, gives us some smoother topology here. There we go. And we're working from a head base mesh. So we're going to end up tweaking it a little bit. Now this is where I sculpt for toys. So you can go into some sort of like, you can go into, perspective if you would like. I typically stay in orthographic, but that's a choice. I have an old alpha here. I'll turn that alpha off. And we're just gonna carve in and try to find our character a little bit. It's a little bit too high. I'm also painting with RGB. I don't want to make those kind of aggressive cuts. Let's see if we can find something that looks pretty decent. I'm also going to kind of carve in some eye sockets here. Now the orbital of the eyes, they're not round, right? They're not like really round. They're more kind of squared off-ish. So when I carve my orbitals or eye sockets in here, I actually make them a little bit more rectangular or squared, and then with like a slight round off. And then here, I'm going to carve in some cheekbones just into that area, kind of dig into this spot, because this is where some fat pad information would be. And then I'm going to push this back and kind of round this up just a little bit, kind of getting that nice little 3/4 shot. And let's go ahead and just search for him just a little bit. Now we're not going for a what expression. We're going for something a little bit more dynamic. So I also will switch over to say something like this and use the DamStandard. And I will kind of map out some harsher lines. Again, take your time. This is not something you have to rush. And I'm actually going to increase the resolution just a little bit because I want just a little bit more of a sketchy. I want to be able to kind of sketch his face. It's really just searching. I should probably save it. And I saw a couple things pop up. Use my face. Awesome, Casey. Awesome. What's better to have for sculpting? One with display or a normal graphic tablet? Honestly, the answer is it's up to you. Every artist is different. I personally use both. So you're watching me use a normal tablet to do my work. But then at home, I use a Cintiq. The tablet I'm using right now is actually a Xencelabs tablet. It's their, I think it's their only size. It's their large size. No, I think they have a couple sizes. But there's their large size. Actually, really nice tablet. It's really good. And so I use this when I'm at work because I have 2 monitors and I have a lot of other stuff on my desk. Where at home, my space is a little limited, so I have a display so that I'm always just on the display and it's on a rocker arm and move it. So I switch back and forth, which is really up to you. So I say try it. I remember the first time I actually got a display tablet, I actually ended up having buyer's remorse for like a couple days. And then immediately I loved it because it was something new. I had been using a normal tablet for quite a while. I'm going to turn on backface mask. So if I come over here to brush and I go to auto masking and then I turn on backface mask, that's where that lives. But anyway, long story longer. Yeah, it was just something that like I tried it. I just went all in because I needed a tablet, so I had just made the jump and switched on over. And it was a really weird experience, not gonna lie, because I was so used to this normal tablet and looking at a monitor that it was uncomfortable and I had to find it. But that was my first experience. But then once I got used to it, I found it to be something that improved the speed of my workflow at the time. But again, that's not something that even I just was there more looking visually. So it did speed me up just a teeny bit, but not like something that I like write home about. So for me personally, at the end of the day, I actually find that it's up to the artist. What works for you is what is going to be beneficial. My experience is that they both have their pros and cons. I really do like the tablet and seeing what I'm working on. I feel a little bit more connected and immersed into my work, but I know I'm sculpting digitally, so it's no big deal. So yeah, again, I would say try it. Try it if you could try it before you buy it. Like, you know, if you know somebody that has one, or you're at school and they have one, I would say get your hands on it because that's going to help you make a more educated decision. Or like go to one of their events. I know like Xencelabs holds stuff. If you're coming to like, for example, SIDGraph, or you're coming to Lightbox or ZBrush Summit or something like that. Usually there's display tablets there, so you can try them and get a sense of it. So if you could try before you buy, that's always a good approach. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. It's great to hear how it worked out for you. 3 monitors, but not enough space to keep a tablet on my desk. So just wondering if I should swap to a normal tablet. Ah, gotcha. Yeah, that's desk setups. Those are always like, those are always the ruling factors, I find. with two monitors right now, and I definitely could use a third. I get it. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the DamStandard here. I'm going to save this. I'm going to sketch out his mouth expression. Carve in a little bit. Rebuild that surface. I'm going to be plopping some teeth in here. But I definitely want to like get all the right vibes in there. He looks really not happy right now. This is a very not so happy guy. So let's come in here. Let's grab. And this is the thing too, like, you know, when you're sculpting a face, especially if you're going to move into some sort of expression, take your time. It's going to be beneficial, I promise. Let's get a little bit of this area here. And what I find too sometimes is that if you wanted to like get something like some temporary teeth or something in here, you can do that pretty simple. Just even if you're just trying to find something. But also too, sculpting some teeth in here is going to help. Getting any type of gum or teeth in here, it's going to help solidify something. So a little quick little tip, a shortcut you could do if you're trying to find your character is check this out. You can actually come up here to the light box and under tools. So if I come up here to tool, and then I come over here to this Ryan Kingsley model. Now this is a female head. This is a female skeleton. But that's okay because we just need it as a kind of quote placeholder. So with this guy right here, I can actually come in here and I can grab just this to basically be my placeholder. Make sure I have things that's working well. So I'm going to come in here and grab this this auto groups, and then I'm going to grab the select lasso. And I'm going to grab the bulk of everything that I want, and then Control-Shift-A will build all the visual polygroups that's left and hide everything else. And then I'm going to come to Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden, and then go to Subtool, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy that. Okay, and I'm going to come back to my model, which is right here, plop them in, and then I'm going to go ahead, open this up, and hit Paste. Now, this is where you've pasted something and it's more likely not the right size. So now I'm going to go here to deformation and unify this. And it will make it a little bit larger and match the scene a little bit more. And now I can bring this in, scale this down. Let's turn on Transpose. Again, this is a female head here, so the goal isn't actually to sit here and match this one-to-one. The goal here is to get a sense of where things need to be. So I'm going to end up scaling this up. Okay, turn off that symmetry area and get some of these shapes in here. And this is, again, this is a little bit more squared off. Grab this section. Okay, so now I'm going to match the head just a little bit to get some of the sense here. So he's going to need some hair soon. And we'll correct that just a little bit better when we get a second. Pull that forward just a little bit. Okay, that should be fine. So now I'm going to come in and just hide this skeleton. And I can use that for reference whenever I would like. But he's still very rough, so let's smooth him out a little bit. Let's get some eyes in here too. So now I'm going to get some eyes in. Easiest way to do that. There's two ways. I could come in here and I could just pick an eye, or we could do this. Go with the macro, macros, and then, where is it? Append eyes. Boom. Now we have some eyes. Scale this sucker down. Let's actually turn on Local Sym, turn off Dynamic so I can scale these down independently. What's neat about this is that we can put the pupils facing forward because it has some poles. Scale this down a little bit more. And of course, if you know the golden rule about eyes, 5 across is about the average. Now his eyes are black here because that's what the append eye does, but I actually am going to want these to be kind of red. So I'm just going to fill that color, come on back, give him some red eyes. Hello, is anyone here? Yes, absolutely. How are you guys doing? How you doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're just figuring out a face. We're in the very rough stage of figuring out his face. Just getting a decent block out, at least getting something that we can work with. Again, when you're doing faces, having reference is key, but also to just knowing that sometimes it takes a little bit. So let's actually turn here. Now, see, I opened up his mouth really, really early, and I actually might want to kind of try to fix that. I may end up closing it back down just to find it a little bit more. But let's see what we got first here. He's also pretty low. So you can see I'm starting to fight a lot of the topology here. He's actually pretty low res. So this is where you have to make the decision of like stepping up and moving between one or the other. So here I'm actually going to rebuild him at a higher resolution so then I can get a little bit more control of the mesh. So like right now I'm only at 152. So this is not a lot. This is actually quite low. So if you're sitting here and you're starting to fight the topology and you're like, man, I just can't hold a shape to save my life, that's always the time to start figuring out about when you should up-res your mesh or move to some other process that makes sense. And once you can control that just a little bit better, you'll actually find it a little bit easier to get the results you're looking for. I want to pick this guy. I want to move this up. Oh. I want to stay in symmetry as much as possible. There we go. Let's go back to ClayBuildup. You came here looking for info about ZBrush. My first question is if the program will run on the Intel Core i5. Ooh, well, you came to the right place for that for sure. Absolutely. So one of the cool things about ZBrush that's really awesome is that it pretty much runs on damn near a 10-year-old machine. So yes, I'm going to confidently say yes, but here's the cool part. I'm going to drop you some specs, and you can go ahead and see the recommended specs. The thing to know about ZBrush is that it's like 99.999% CPU driven, not GPU driven, which is really the thing to remember. There's no real GPU processes except for a couple tools that use that will use the GPU. So so you'll want right now, you should be able to run that on a fairly decent machine. So if it can run a video game, it can run ZBrush. You just will probably not have to. There is the specs right there. You're probably just not going to want to be able to go up to 200 million right away. So it is really going to be just a process that you kind of, look at those specs, see what you got, compare them, and you should be good to go. Okay. Somebody asked, how am I going to do the hair? That's a great question, and I have a couple ideas about doing the hair, because that's going to help me find him as well. But before I do that, I want to give him some eyelids and kind of just an overall idea of a face. That's always nice. So what I'm going to do here is come in and let's give him some eyelids. And then, yeah, let's figure out the hair part. And again, this is actually pretty low still. So let's up this. There we go. Just doing some mild cleanup. So there's a couple of ways I could do the hair. Because he's kind of in a pose, yeah, his head is symmetrical, but I thought about maybe doing a Z sketch on his hair. I haven't used ZSketch in a while, so it'd be fun to reuse that tool and kind of try some things. But also, it's also just kind of easy to just kind of come in and do a block out. But I feel like you get to explore more with ZSketch. So we'll see. We'll try some things. Still kind of exploring his face a little bit. I'm going to grab the DamStandard here. I'm going to kind of come in and give him a little bit of a rigid nose. Kind of start covering in a little bit. Absolutely. Yeah, not a problem. Ah, hey, Prashant, how you doing? Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to do him justice. He's technically my first X-Men character. Technically. First official X-Men character. But you guys voted. And so here we are, sculpting away. So why am I not in perspective? That's a great question. So I usually sculpt for toys, and orthographic view is a really great view for toys. And so I am making him into a statue. But right now I'm still kind of sketching him out. So I have done perspective before. It really just depends on my mood. Really just depends on what I want to do at the time. But honestly, finding the character the way it is, I think right now orthographic is going to be fine. If I wanted to match an actual person, I would do perspective, but I'm not really looking to do that right now. So for me, orthographic is going to be perfectly fine because again, I'm not really pushing towards any particular reference. I'm more just kind of sculpting and having fun and breaking this character a lot. So you can see here there's a lot of actual anatomy breakage that I need to rebuild as well since we posed him. So it really is a choice. But fantastic question. And I think we're going to get into the spot where we're going to start doing the hair here in a minute. I might just play with ZSketch just to see if that's going to give me what I want, because his hair is kind of messy. It depends too what kind of hairstyle we want to go with. See, he has this this kind of mess about him at the top on some of the older comics, and then some, so his hair is kind of wavy, but then sometimes it's short. So there's definitely a lot going on. I don't want this hairstyle. I don't like it. This is a little bit more casual and cool. So he's had a lot of hairstyles, so I feel like I can just kind of make something that would be kind of neat. Where are we at in time? We still got some time. So let's do something. Let me see real fast. What do I want to do? That is the question. You know what? I think it might be best just to kind of like throw a sphere in his head and just sketch, just explore. I think that's what we're going to do. Let's do that. Get those teeth in there. That kind of brings out a little bit more of him. Awesome. You are so welcome. Does ZBrush have any plans to update the FiberMesh system? Not that I could talk about. I can't say NDA stuff. You know this. You know this. But is there something specific that you're actually like you're having an issue with? I don't usually play with FiberMesh, but I can help you solve a problem if you're having a problem with it. Or if there's something you're curious about, I might be able to answer that. You know, I'm just the guy who plays with ZBrush a lot, and okay, let's actually throw let's do that. Let's throw a thing on his head. So let's go here, insert sphere. I'm gonna clean this up here, move this up, kind of close this down. Boom. All right. We good? We done? We done? That's the hairstyle? That would be so wild. What a hairstyle indeed. Okay. This is where I'm just going to now explore some shapes. Sometimes this is just like the easiest solution. Individual strand placements. Individual strand placements. Okay. Well, but you can do that with NanoMesh. That NanoMesh might be your best friend, actually, with that. So here, I might be able to show a thing or two. 1 second. Where are we at right now? We're at 11:30. So just using the spiral brush now, and let's come up here. Let's do DynaMesh here. Oh yeah, that was gross. Perfect. It's okay. Whoop, hitting too many things. Okay, I'm hitting everything. Switch your keyboard and bip bop 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 bop. There you go. Calm down. There we go. Kind of rebuild that surface here. Just kind of tossing the hair around a little bit. I was using the spiral to kind of get a little bit of that waviness about them. Use some ClayBuildup. Kind of fluff this up just a little bit. Working symmetrically, but with hair, you're going to want to break symmetry at some point. Well, you're going to want to break symmetry, just period. This is where I'm going to push in his head just a little bit. There we go. So see, the more you add to it, the more you'll be like, yeah, that's not good. We'll just do that. let's look at the side here for a second. I don't want just like a rounded spot. So I'm going to want a little bit of flatness. And let's actually just do the BDS. Let's get the DamStandard up there. Let's get more intensity. There we go. Let's just go ahead and just add some areas here. There we go. Say something like that. Okay, just a little placeholder for now. Again, I'm keeping everything loosey-goosey just for the fact that there's so much that needs to still happen here. Okay. So, okay, so let's talk FiberMesh and individual strand changes. Okay, so let's do this. Let's put them over here. Let's just put that guy right there. And let's just grab, actually, let's do this. Just put him over here. Let's just grab a sphere. Or actually, we can grab, yeah, a sphere is fine. Or we can grab a plane even. Let's do that. Let's grab a plane here. Okay. So why I said NanoMesh might be your best friend is, let's go ahead. We have a sphere here. So first off with FiberMesh, right? What you can do with FiberMesh, I'm sure you already know this, but it works off of your masking system. So if I have, say, something like this, I mask this section. Oh, I have wrap mode turned on. Yes. Let's go here. Let's go to curve. Let's turn wrap mode. And then let's come here, wrap mode. Perfect. Okay. So I have this area here, and now we're going to go ahead and do some FiberMesh fun stuff. So if I open up FiberMesh, a lot of times I like to start with something like this. That's going to get me started. That just sets me a bunch of presets. Now I have my modifiers, right? And I'm just going to turn off all the color because I don't really care about the color at the moment. So I'm driving this section here. And now I have this. And now, of course, too, I can control how many fibers I have, the length of my fibers, etc. I'm sure the coverage as well. I'm sure you know all this part. So at this point now, let's see here. I'm actually going to drop this down to say something like this. So I have this system here. And let's say this is what I'm really looking for, because I'm going to want to populate this patch of grass in a lot of different areas. So with FiberMesh, typically what I would do at this point is I could save out this preset, of course, that I would want. But if I'm going to want to put individual patches of grasses or individual blades of grasses, then I think the easiest way would be to control that with NanoMesh by making a brush. So I'm going to accept this, right? And now this is going to give me all of this. And all of this is just a poly group. But I'm only going to want a few sections of this. So I'm going to go to polygroups and auto groups. And now I'm going to have just a couple of these. Now, there is a question, or maybe this was a related statement, but can't you just use topological for that? So yes, if you wanted to move individual pieces of grass, if that was related to this, unless you were talking about my hair, then no worries. But here with move brush or the move topological, yeah, I would be able to come in here and say, you know, auto masking topological, and now every time I pick a individual single poly group, that's going to help me do that. But let's say that's not what I want. I want to place patches of grass where I need that to be. So now what I'm going to say is let me come in here and just grab a small section. So I'm going to grab my select lasso, and I'm going to want this guy. This guy. I'm just going to grab from this little section right in here. Okay. So I have this here. And I'm going to go ahead and just split hidden for the sake of fun arguments. Split hidden. Okay. And now I have this. Now, I'm going to give this some thickness because I'm sure you're all like, I can't see a thing you're doing. And you're right. So I'm going to put on some thickness. So I'm going to take smooth off. And I'm going to just add a little bit of thickness so you can see what's happening here. Okay. All right, now what I'm going to end up doing from this side right here is this is where you could do this with an individual span of grass. Again, I'm going to use the Move Topological, or if you want to use the Move Topological and you set your brush down to 1, then I can actually move a whole portion of this pretty easily. So I can move it this way, or again, just come in here, grab something like this, grab my gizmo, move this here with my gizmo selected. I can control tap, and I can do something like this. And I can position these all grouped together if I would like. So now I have my little patch of grass, right? From here, I can turn this into a brush. So create insert brush, say new. Okay, and now I'm dragging out my grass. Yes, that's super fun. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. Make sure my gizmo's up. I'll rotate this up a little bit more like that. And let's do that one more time. Come up here. I want a better selection. Insert, and I'm just going to say new. Okay, now let's test this out. So if I come back to my plane here, and I grab this and I'm dragging this out, this is my grass. Okay, now this is where let's get a better material. Okay, so now I have this guy here. Now what I want to do is I want to actually apply this to just individual areas of my actual plane here. So this is where turning this grass into a NanoMesh brush. So I could say create NanoMesh with that brush selected. And now what I can do is, let's say I want grass here, 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 patch of grass here, patch of grass over here, and a patch of grass here. That's what I want. Now when I come in and I hover over that spot, you'll notice that my brush now turned into basically a Z-modeler brush with insert NanoMesh. And I want to select everything on that poly group. Now I can come in and individually place that right then and there. Now, of course, it's a little bit embedded, right? And it's a little bit too perfect. Notice it all came in super perfect. So now I can come up here to NanoMesh, okay? I can increase the size. I can increase the actual position. I want the height to be up there. The x-axis, or in this case, the y-axis. I'm sorry, the z-axis. Right? But now I can actually create some variation. I can create some rotation that I would like to do, and then from there I can actually turn the y or x or z coordinates to actually give me a little bit more just variation between the two. So I can come in here and say something like this. I can even do a random seed where I'm picking just a random look to it, and even distribute that randomly so that I have more patches, and that's all being driven by my nano. So these are ways that you can go about doing this and getting this situated just a little bit more. I can even drag it up. So these are ways that you can drive this and get your individual patches of grass out there. Strange, but the notification just came. Oh, interesting. Yeah, because we only got like a few more minutes. We only got like 20 minutes. That's a bummer. So at this point, so this is where, so answering that question with the FiberMesh, you kind of think of it in more parts. Like the NanoMesh section is going to help you pick individual planes. And what's cool about this is that you can actually show, you can actually like hide the instances of where this is being driven. So like if you had just like a single plane out there that you drug this out on, you can hide the plane. So you could place your planes everywhere that you want grass, and then you can drive it all from this NanoMesh. And at this point, this is not geometry. Look at my actual poly count here. Like my only poly count is driven by this area right here. So I have all this grass, but when I go ahead and say inventory 1 to mesh, now I made it real geometry. Now I went from 1,000 to almost 50,000. So this is where NanoMesh can really like help you kind of distribute out where you want those areas to be. So if you're making a whole scene and you want the grass to be everywhere, but you don't want to take massive CPU, this is what you could do. And what's cool is you can come in here and edit your mesh too. So now I can come in and make changes to my mesh as well. So if I come in here and hit edit mesh, now I can start making big changes. Again, I can start moving this around. just to really showcase the point of that. Let me just drag this all the way up here. So now we get a little bit of variation, right? Now come back, and now all that's going to update. So you can see here, I started getting a little bit of changes. And again, just coming and making some variation changes. This is going to help you get something that looks a little bit unique. So really pushing it as the example. Yes, absolutely, Casey. Absolutely. Good, good, good. Glad I could help with that. So that's FiberMesh with NanoMesh. So really think of it in that instance. And this is something that like I really want you all to think about too when you're utilizing ZBrush's potential, is that ZBrush in it itself, it has features that work off of features that work off of features. For example, let me show you one that I don't see get used enough, and we'll do it here on my really ugly head that for some reason, this head is gross, guys. I'm working, so we'll continue to clean him up. I might actually, if I have some time, clean him up a little bit more. But let's say I actually want to do some sort of like wrinkle system on this guy's head, or I want to add like some kind of like, you know, interesting vibes or whatnot. So check this out. So I'm going to duplicate this, and we're just going to go ahead and come here. Let's do a quick ZRemesh. Again, my little secret sauce recipe here, because you just never know, guys. You never know. Coming down here, ZRemesher, we want the adapt. Turn the adapt off. Get that pretty low. Okay, so now I have some pretty decent topology. So I went from this to this. That's cool. All right, now I'm gonna, you know, we'll do a subdivision preview. So we'll just say hit D for subdivision. Now let's say I want to actually like come in and add some wrinkles to him. Well, here's the cool part. So what I could do is I can combine features. So I could take my thick skin, right, and I can use thick skin to give him a little bit of bloatiness. Say something like this. All right, cool. So now this area, we all know that thick skin, I can start sculpting, 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 and at some point in time, it's going to ultimately cap, right? Like it's going to stop me from going any further. It's just going to cap, okay? Well, how else could we use this feature? Well, what we could do is let's say we mask off this section right in here and maybe down here just a little bit just for fun. I'm going to inverse this, right? Now I have my handy dandy gizmo, but instead of using this gizmo, I'm going to go ahead and turn around and use the cloth gizmo. And now I can actually utilize the cloth gizmo and keep the thick skin portion. So at some point in time, it's going to cap out. But I can come in here and get some really interesting wrinkles by utilizing these two methods. And it's going to stop at some point. It's not going to let me go too much further because there's going to be a cap. So if I actually kick this thick skin down, you see here, now I'm controlling that overall thickness. It's not letting me go any further. So this could also too help you get some like a little bit of aging happening on your character, or a little bit of wrinkling happening on your cloth. It'll help control. So if you think of combining features instead of using them independently, you'll start noticing a lot of things open up to you very quick. Nano, 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 nano. Hey, Cube! What's happening? Everybody say hi to A-Cube. A-Cube, hi! How are you doing? How's life going? Awesome for zombie flesh. Yes, happy extruder. There you go. Now, yep, absolutely. A little off topic. Is it normal for game studios to hold job offers? What do you mean by that? Like to hold on to job offers? Just lurking. How's you? I'm doing well. Doing well. Have a few more minutes and trying to still figure out this lovely character at the moment. Nightcrawler, we need to fix him up because we broke him. But you know, we don't care about topology that much because we're going for statue work, so it's fine. It's fine. A-Cube, are you streaming today? Yes, thank you, yeah. Yeah, so right now I've really stretching him beyond repair. So we need to, well, he's not beyond repair. I say that as if like I can't fix him, but we'll fix him. We'll get him there. We need to like fit, okay, what we need to do is like these hands, okay, these hands are gross, guys. These hands are gross. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to duplicate these hands. I'm going to pick one of them. Just only one, like Highlander. That's it. It could only be one. I'm going to go ahead and delete hidden, and let's do a quick hand cleanup / pose real fast. And that, because that will take up a majority of the time. So modify topology, delete hidden, and then let's send over this hand. This is the perk about digital, right? Is now I can like come over, work on one hand, and then mirror and weld it. So let's do some quick magic. Ah, nice. Very cool. Oh, look at that. Move topological. Move transpose the cloth. There we go. Let's do this. You'll be currently waiting for 3 months. Always in contract with them, and they said it was super. You know, honestly, what I can say as somebody who's done a lot of freelance and contract work before in the past, I don't know what studio's best practices are. I can only speak from my experience, and my experience has been that if you are doing any type of contract or freelance work, that it's usually good to have multiple options. I've had in the past, you know, been promised a job that never came to fruition, and it took a long time. And I was working with their company, and everything was great. And I still to this day love the fact that I was able to work with said company, but it was hard, you know. I would say ultimately, like, you know, just keep your eye out. That's what I would recommend. But I can't really speak on best practices for studios because every studio has different practices and hiring procedures. And wow, I just broke that thumb. Like, I just like killed it. Who needs a thumb? Who needs a thumb? What are we doing here today? So yeah. So again, I can't speak on other companies. I can only talk about my personal experience. But yeah, I would say just keep an eye out for other type of opportunities because you never know. But I would also say too, just kind of like to just throw that out there as my own opinion and my opinion alone. It does not hurt to reach out and continue the conversation with whoever you're talking to. So I would say just keep the conversations going. But you know, if another opportunity comes up, then you know, we have to do what's right by us. We have to eat and pay rent and do all that other good jazz. So, but yeah. So hopefully that answers the question. It's probably not the answer that you were expecting, but that's been my experience. Yeah, unfortunately, it does happen quite a lot. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's like my little tip when it comes to hand anatomy. Look at your hand. I'm going to do this a lot because Nightcrawler only has those fingers, and that's how we made this hand. But I'm really going for that kind of pose. Let me do all these hand poses over here for you guys. So I'm doing that kind of thing. I guess I could have just done it with this one. Weep, weep, weep. Right, so, but what I like to do, my little, oh, I think my tablet did die. Okay, cool. Well, what I am going to do is I'm going to take the DamStandard here, switch to, we're going to switch to a mouse for the last couple minutes. I'm going to put some indicators here on where the fingers should be kind of bending, or at least get a general sense of that. This makes sense. Did my mouse really die? No. Okay, there it goes. Sorry, my tablet was being weird. Okay, so let's kind of do that thing right there. And then what I'm going to do is come over here to DynaMesh, pop this up, and get a decent resolution so I can work with it a little bit better, rebuild some of that. My tablet was like acting weird. I'm back to a tablet now. Don't worry. I'm just upping the game, AQ. I up it every time. That's how it works. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, rotate this around. Anyway, so I'm trying to kind of just like get a sense of where the fingers should be positioned. And that helps me visually just a little bit. If you watched my Wacom stream, you saw me play with fingers for a better part of like 20, 30 minutes. There we go. Let's get the hand button there. Right, a little bit of somewhat recognizable anatomy. Channel the mouse spirit of trust. Absolutely. How you doing, MJ? That's a requirement. You want to work here, you got to be able to sculpt with a mouse and a tablet. And you got to switch back flawlessly. I'm just kidding. That would be an insane requirement. Although when I do hard surface work in ZBrush, I tend to use a mouse more. Just because I find it a little bit more comfortable, actually. Already failed here. Okay, just get a rough sense of what this would look like, and then, okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do like kind of a position of the fingers, because his hand's just kind of like, we want dynamic, right? We want like, yes. So we're going to stretch out this area here, and then I'm going to push this down. I'm going to rotate this down just a little bit. So again, when it comes to stuff like this, I don't care about stuff like this. When it comes to like posing, I'm not afraid to break my mesh, because my mesh here is going to like, it's really going to fix itself with DynaMesh. That's the whole point of DynaMesh. So I don't worry about that stuff. What I worry about is just getting the expression of the pose down, and then from there, we focus on fixing it. What's going to be cool is I'm going to be taking a traditional sculpting course soon with John Brown, and I'm really excited about it because I can't wait to try to do this. And I've never done any type of traditional sculpting whatsoever, so for me, I'm very curious to see how that translates, because I know a lot of traditional artists that have moved traditional to digital, and their game is just amazing. So I'm hoping that like with a class or two, I'll already see like a really cool benefit from the process. You're actually allergic to mouse sculpting? Like I balloon up, I can't. It's not easy. Oh man, yeah, 100%. It's not. I mean, I don't recommend it, but I'm streaming, so what am I gonna do? Like, I just can't stop. I'm not gonna stop the stream. Can't stop. Won't stop the beat. Oh, I wish I could. I won't be able to. But if I end up digging, it, then I'm gonna be. Maybe on some personal time, I'll be doing some traditional sculpting. We'll see how much I like it. Really, like, part of the reason why I wanted to take it was to up my anatomy game, because I feel like anatomy for me is always something that's going to be a forever journey. Like there's always something to learn. There's always something to do. And so with that process, like I'm always like intrigued by it. But I feel like because I started digital, what was interesting about starting digital was that I was already kind of, you know, learning how to sculpt and then learning how to do ZBrush. So time behind the wheel with anything is something that, like, you know, you get more experience the more times you do it, right? And if you do it right, then you get better fast. So if you have somebody who's like guiding you and helping you and critiquing your work and getting something good, then, you know, you'll end up becoming really good at what you're doing because you can improve, right? Well, now imagine like with sculpting, I could only imagine when you have to sculpt a character, you have to sculpt two hands, not one and then copy and paste like I'm currently doing, right? So, and that's kind of my vibe about it. I'm like, man, so whatever character or bust or whatever thing I choose to do at the class, like I'm gonna have to do the work like twice over, right? So I'll have to do two hands, 2 feet, 2 legs, 2 arms, etc., etc. Is my point. So, and I feel like that actually might help that time behind the wheel, so to speak. So that's kind of my thought process, but that's I have never sculpted in my life point of view, as in traditional sculpting. Obviously, I sculpt digitally. All right, let's do this. What time we got? We only got a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to have to leave because work has to be done. But we're getting something a little bit better, a little bit more what I'm going for. So again, doing the same thing here, kind of getting a kind of crazy pose here going on. Yeah, it's going to be crazy fun with no symmetry. Dude, that's exactly what I'm super excited about. I am super excited to get my hands on learning traditional and experiencing what that's like. I can't wait. I'm super jazzed. Okay. So I'm probably going to spend some time on this character critiquing, fixing some stuff, but not moving him too crazy, but just for the sake of having something here that looks halfway decent. Let's move that hand out the way. What am I doing? Let's go ahead and put this guy here. Let's position this. Boop. Okay, let's go ahead and position this in a way that makes a little bit more sense. Okay, look at that position there, and then let's go ahead and I'm going to delete this set of hands here, copy this hand. So what is this? This is his left hand. So I'm going to go L, I'm going to go hand L. I'm going to duplicate this, rename this. Okay, call this _R, and then I'm just going to come here to deformation. I'm going to mirror that. Set that bad boy over here. Kind of rotate this about. Yes. Yes. All right, there we go. It's looking better. Looking better. We're still, in my opinion, in the valley of the suck. There's still a lot of stuff that needs to get done, but of course, you know, there's only so many hours in the day, so we'll go nice and slow. I do like projects that take a little bit longer to set up, just because it helps challenge me a little bit with, you know, the way I'm approaching the character, the vibe I'm going. Because I'm so interested in the actual pose first and working that out, I'm actually more interested in getting it right the first time. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, if you're going for like what I'm doing right here, which is getting that pose situated, then don't worry about like getting everything looking super pretty. You're really just kind of focused on getting something that feels right. Let's go and connect this up. And again, I don't consider myself a fast sculptor, so And I actually like taking my time. I used to do speed sculpts all the time. Then I actually walked away from doing that so much. I do them once in a while, but for this, I want this to be a nice collectible. So we're going to take our time. And then I'm just going to go here, carve that down just a little bit, push that in. All right. Oh, hold on. I can't leave with that. Can't leave with that. Okay, cool. We'll correct a lot of this anatomy. All right, so there's a lot to do, which is awesome, but I think he's looking a lot cooler. And there's a lot going on. Turned on perspective. So we still have a lot to do, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So where are we at? It's 12:02. Yeah. Very cool. Thank you guys for showing up. AQ, thanks for stopping and hanging out. Always a pleasure. Everyone, thank you for your great questions. Hopefully you guys learned a lot. Again, we'll be chaptering this, and it will be over on YouTube. And so no worries on that. You'll be able to actually see this process and all of the questions and stuff that we hit. Again, whether you're new to sculpting or you're super experienced, it doesn't really matter. Just that you're creating art, you're having fun and enjoying the process. That's really what artistry is about, and that's what I love. And just the fact that I get to do this is just super amazing, and get to hang out with you is even cooler. So thank you guys for showing up. Real fast, I preached it before, I'll preach it again. Student-teacher licensing, it's less than a meal. It's probably cheaper than most meals if you go out. If you're a student and you need our software, you get all of Maxon One for less than food. So this is what my USD price is. So definitely check that out because it gets you in ZBrush right away. And there's a link to that. And then, of course, to the ZBrush Summit. I am preaching it all the time, every time, because I can and because it's live, ZBrushSummit.com. So please go register because it's online and it's in person. So if you're in the LA area, you want to fly to the LA area, you time travel to the LA area, or you've came in on UAP, whatever works out for you, however you got here. If you're in this area and you want to hang out with us and experience the summit in person, it is live this year in person, and we're going to have more information about that. So again, everybody, take it easy. Have a great one. Snickles, you're funny. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye, everyone. Peace.